Welcome to a new episode of Thinking It Through with Tia. I know it's been a while since I've made a video, but that was with intention. Um, I have taken some time away to do some things for myself personally. That has been fantastic. So, I wanted to come back today just to do a quick video to talk about a question that I get asked very often. And sometimes when I hear the question, it makes me think people think that I'm some kind of exception to the rule, but I'm not. So, the topic that we're going to talk about today is authenticity. Many times people approach me and they ask how I became who I am today. To explain what that means, generally when they meet me, they realize I'm very calm and grounded. I'm very direct on how I feel. I'm only going to do what I want and not what everybody else wants me to do. But the basis of that is really just authenticity. So, how I became who I am is by remembering who I am. There was a point in my life that I was focusing on trying to become this version of myself. Like, I should be this person or I could be that person or whatnot. But then I kept finding that it just didn't quite feel right. It didn't feel true or honest to myself. So I just started to say, who am I? And I know that that's a very hard question to ask. Many people cannot go through with answering that question because sometimes they'll only answer the good things about themselves or they'll only see the bad things that other people see about them. They won't often look at the whole picture. Okay. So one of the things that I started to do was say, okay, well, who am I? And as I started to look into who I was, I started to say, okay, well, I am a kind person, not a nice person. That's a great separation, right? Nice for me means that you give just because somebody needs it to make other people feel better, even if it makes you feel worse. I don't believe in that. So I would say that I'm a kind person. My whole life, everybody's been saying I was nice because that was because people would try to take advantage of you. And when they're taking advantage of you, they want you to be nice because in being nice, it's easier to take advantage. So I realized I'm really not a nice person. I'm a kind person. I could choose to be nice or I could choose to say no. The most important thing about my authenticity is that regardless, I'm going to keep a boundary, right? So I had to say, okay, so if I realize that I'm a kind person and not necessarily a nice person, now I realize that I must have boundaries. Okay, well, what do boundaries look like? Well, boundaries look like, for me, what am I seeking? What are my desires? And how do I get there? What do I desire? Could be peace, joy, happiness, respect, reciprocity. It could be so many different things. But it also could be something as simple as rest. I require rest. So if I'm being asked to do a multitude of things and it's going to cause me to burn out, but it'll make everyone else happy, then my answer is still going to be no, because I can no longer think about what everybody else's needs are. I have to think about what do I need, because at the end of the day, if I'm not secure, if I'm not stable within myself, if I'm not well rested, what do I really have to offer you or someone else but a burnt out experience? So boundaries stepped in. For a lot of people, when I started putting up boundaries, they didn't like it. When I started standing in my boundaries, right? Because boundaries are for me, they're not for you. I'm not asking anyone else to lean to my boundaries. I'm only saying that my boundaries exist. They are for me, they are in place, and they will be respected and honored by me. I'm not asking another person to respect my boundaries. I will. So if I'm approaching a person or a person is approaching me and having a conversation with me and it strikes an area that hits my boundaries, it's for me to say, okay, let's stop. This doesn't work for me. And that form of authenticity is often hard for people to receive that because they think, oh, you think you're better, or you think you're this, or you think. I don't think about any of that. I always tell people, when people mention that I may think I'm better or that people think they're better, the reality of it is I don't even spend my time in comparison to other people. Therefore, it could be no possibility of me thinking that I'm better than another person. My focus instead is really on being better than the person I was yesterday and continuing to do that day after day after day. And the more that I continue to do that, the more I started to remember who I already am, who I've always been. I basically became the most authentic version of myself by simply looking closely inside, recognizing what wasn't mine, what didn't work, what didn't align with who I said I was, what I wanted to do, who I want to be. And then I separated myself from it. And when I separated myself from the things that didn't align with me, I uncovered the real me, the truth of me, the confident me, the charismatic me, the goofy me, because I'm that too, but the spiritual me. It's so many facets of me that I discovered. And even when it went a little further, I would sometimes say, dang, well, I was saying I'm a kind person, but I will check you very fast too. So what is it? Like it would, people would say, well, you seem so kind and now you're being mean, or now you're being this, or now you're being that. And like you're fake. And I would say, okay, I'm not fake, right? Because I don't attest to that. I live in truth. I live in harmony. But the way that I would describe who I am to help me understand it, and once I understood it, now I can describe it to others, but to help me understand is I would like to view myself as a diamond, right? So when I look at myself authentically, I'm a diamond, right? And a diamond has multiple facets. So depending upon how you're looking at the diamond, the angle you're looking at, you can see different things, but it's all still that same diamond. And so for me, that's what I am. I'm just this one diamond with multiple facets, or you can change that to faces for many people. I don't wear a mask, but I am authentically me. Therefore, I am who I need to be in the moment. I'm not going to pretend to be anyone. You could talk to people that I work with and they will tell you she is her all the time. And sometimes we think she shouldn't be her, but she don't care. She is her. But the most beautiful thing that I found is once I stepped into my true authenticity, once I stepped into remembering her, remembering this being that existed from birth, that had been beat down by life and had so much judgment placed and so much harm done and so much hurt and so much betrayal and so much, all of these things that make people feel like, oh, what can I do? My life is over. I don't know what I can do. Once I started going to look for her and I started to realize who she was, me, I started to realize what wasn't me. I started to realize what I wasn't. I started to realize the things that had been said to me that I took personally and made it a point of me. Things that society says has to be a certain way. And it's like, oh, well, I need to get in alignment with that. But then I feel off balance. But I'm like, how am I feeling off balance? But I'm doing what's supposed to be right. I'm being fair. I'm being reasonable. I'm doing these things, but it's just certain parts that don't feel right because every time I'm doing this, people think that it means that I'm naive or something. They think that it means that they could just take advantage of who I am, or that I'm a great target to try to trick or something like that. But in reality, I'm very wise. I'm very spiritual. I'm very psychic. Okay. I have high empathy. I'm very intuitive. I can sense it already. I just don't always say something, because just because someone is dealing with an emotion doesn't mean that emotion has anything to do with you. most of the time when somebody else kind of comes up and they do something that is what one would consider an attack against another person, it's generally never about you. It's about something within them that they may feel is lacking, or that they may feel is maybe not fair from the perspective they're seeing, or something that they wish that they had the potential to step into doing, and they don't do it. And so when you become an authentic individual, it helps you to always be you, and that freaks people out for whatever reason. It freaks people out because I'm always me, right? And when you're always you, that means you don't change. And when someone thinks you're great, but then they think, wait, well, why is she great all the time? It has to be fake. It has to be a mask. Oh, she has to be pretending. Oh, you have to be, this person has to be trying to prove that they think they're better than me. This person has to prove that they're doing this or that they're doing this. And then automatically people start to look, and their mind begins to try to figure out what exactly it is about you that's troubling them. Now, the authentic version of me, additionally, has actually done the healing work. So in the search for authenticity, in the search for the truth of who I am, I went into a deep dive of who I truly am, deeper than I had gone before. And what I found is that I don't like having to please other people. I don't like having to do what everybody else wants me to do. And it felt so wrong. It felt so wrong, because guess what? I found out I was a people pleaser. Oh, God, I was a heavy, heavy people pleaser. And it was just like, oh, God, no, we got to stop this. So how do we do it? So I go and I sit and I say, what got you here? Every time I felt an emotion, I stopped and I said, what's triggering this? If somebody made me feel upset or hurt, I would say, hey, what's the exact feeling I feel? Is it anger? Is it hurt? Is it disappointment? Is it just annoyance? Is it frustration? Or most importantly, do I even care enough to have this feeling, right? Because if it's not something that is going to make a dynamic change to my life, I can't put too much energy into it, because what would be the point, right? So I had to say, okay, I realize I'm feeling a lot of feelings. I realize that there are so many different emotions that I'm feeling, and so many different emotions that I was describing as I was going through the process of getting to know me. And then I didn't run from it. When I encountered an emotion that triggered something, I would ask, okay, what am I feeling? Well, why am I feeling that way? Is it this situation or is it something else? And the more that I continue to go into that, the more I continue to go in that, the more I continue to go in that, I would recognize an opportunity of healing, and then I do the work. Some might call it shadow work, but shadow work just means looking at the things within you that the light is not shining on. And that may be a stretch for many people, so let me say that a different way. The things that people can't see, you take the time to intentionally look at. So look at why you're afraid. Why do you have fear? Why don't you trust? Why do you prefer to worry? Why do you choose stress? Why do you doubt? There's a reason. If you take the time to look at yourself, there is a reason that you go through these emotions. And the most beautiful thing that I found is that when you go inside and you figure it out, why? Most of it's childhood trauma. Some of it is relational. Some of it is things that are just illusions, right? Most of it is really just an illusion, but you won't know until you look, right? So sometimes we think it's so hard to look, and what am I going to do with what I find? Well, most of the time you can find out that it was an illusion. And as an illusion, you could simply accept it as an illusion and then choose a different direction. And that's what I did. But more so, what I found is, as I went through it, as I was willing over this last year to go deeper and deeper inside of myself to best understand myself, I messed around and regulated my nervous system. I don't know how I did it. I do know how I did it, but I regulated my nervous system. And that's, I think, the part that gives people the absolute most. They cannot figure out what it is about me that makes me feel so different than most people that they're around. And usually it's really just that I have a regulated nervous system. And what a regulated nervous system is, and taking the time to look within myself and understand what I was feeling, why I was feeling it, all of those things, and then making a decision about what I was going to do with it, I was able to address the traumas that were in my life, bring them up to the surface, address them, release them, bring it up, address it, release, bring it up, address it, and release. But you have to realize, and nobody really told me that after you've done that so much, there's so much less inside of you that's now triggering worrisome thoughts or thoughts of doubt, fear, things like that. There's so much less going on in the experience and so much more of you available. And then you realize that, well, shoot, I feel like I'm afraid because they say all my life I had to fight, right? I feel like I'm afraid because it feels like I'm fighting towards everything. It feels like I'm struggling towards everything. Wait, isn't that just surviving? Oh, okay. When did this mode of survival start? A long time ago. Why did I need to get into this mode of survival? Because life was different then. Look at life now. Do you really think you need to be in that same place? And then this light bulb comes off. Boom. What are you trying to survive? Why are you still trying to survive in a place where you're now living? You don't need to survive anymore. You're thriving. You're living. And I realized that was one of the hardest things to put down. It was so difficult to put down survival mode. It was the thing that took the absolute longest time, especially being a person that go get it. I get it done, and I do it by myself. I do it for myself. I do what I need to do. To me, that was just being a hustler. I was just hustling. I was getting it done. I was being responsible. But no, I was surviving. Because even in knowing that I was responsible, I was still worrying about whether things were going to work. When everything was clear as day in front of me that it would, I was still worrying. Why? Because I was still focusing on how I had to survive. But once my nervous system regulated, it's this quiet peace and ease that lives in me. There's no sounds within my body. Like, I can't hear my heart beating. I can't hear my blood rushing. You're stressed when you're doing that. I just thought, hey, I'm alive. No, like I can't feel any of that. I feel at peace. I don't feel the need to ever really raise my voice. I don't feel the need to do pretty much anything but just be at peace. I could look at situations and I just stay me all the time. And a part of me really thought that this wasn't a real thing, right? I was like, maybe it's just because nothing traumatic has come up, or nothing has come up to really, kick my feet from under me or try to throw me for a loop. So maybe I think I'm regulated, but it ain't been put to the test, right? Well, it was put to the test recently. It was definitely put to the test in a major way recently. Something that could have been very destructive, something that could have been life-threatening. And the way that I handled it, the way that I stayed exactly who I am now, because I've chosen authenticity. And once you choose authenticity, why would I choose anything else? All I can do is be me. And in my authentic way of being, it helped this attack that was coming against me be recognized quickly by the people that it was involving, and everything just went away, no problem. So something that could have been my life in 1 second, very close to being my life in 1 second, then becoming an accusation and being my livelihood in the next second. Me remaining who I am and staying true to me and not bending to meet what somebody is trying to pull out of me helped to keep me stable and helped to make that situation be something that moved away from me with ease. The other person had to deal with it. Unfortunately, it turned around on them, and they had to deal with the consequences of what they were trying to do to me. However, it made me know. So like some people say, it's not fair that you had to go through that. I'm so sorry that you had to deal with that. It's not right. I get it. And maybe it's not. Maybe it is not right. I'm not condoning what the person did, but I'm grateful that I got a chance to fully see that who I am, I really am. And it's not because the situation hadn't come. The situation is not going to shake who I am because I am who I am. And with a regulated nervous system, when you stay very calm, it tends to, and psychologically, it tends to make other people around you calm as well. But the opposite side of it is it can also trigger another person to project towards you whatever it is that they're going on, and that can become very dangerous at times. But being in this scenario now, being this version of me now, taking the time for me in a deeper way has been the most absolutely beautiful experience of my life to date. Getting to know me, realizing that I was already me. Like they say, I was already her. There was nothing I needed to be. There's nothing I needed to do. I love who I am. I carry myself away. I move how I want to move. I'm authentically me. So when someone asks, how did you become who you are today? I often answer just by being happy, right? And that answer is based on, even though many things that I found inside or many things that I had to separate from, and these were not people, okay? These were not people. I separated from people time ago, okay? This healing, this depth was being able to separate from the limiting mindsets that I had, that life is sometimes hard, or that people are always going to try to take advantage, or that, I have to work for what I want. Not true. These are not true statements when you figure out that you've just been living in the shadow of what everybody else has told you you are. Your childhood was the first start because you were raised to think a way, you were raised to act a way, you were raised to do this. And sometimes you became an adult and rebelled against that. Sometimes as a teenager, you rebelled against that, or you say, I'm not going to do that. They made me have to do this all my life. I want to do it my own way. And instead of choosing to let me look inside and figure out who I truly am, we often rebel. So we become something else that is not even the truth of us, just to prove to people, you can't hurt me, you can't do this, I'm this. You understand? It's so many things that we do that get in the way of us. But it's all just survival. We're all just surviving. Life told you had to be tough to survive. You had to do all these different things, and everybody's life is different. So I'm talking about my own, but think of your own experiences, because everybody's life is different. But it's so much that life has taught us that we have to be in order to be true, or in order to be authentic, or that's not fair. You know, they didn't mean it, or that's your parent, and that's your friend, or that's this, and you should forgive them, and your relationship, but you've had the relationship for so long. You should forgive. You should just give them another chance. Why? Why would I do that? Becomes the question. What is the logic behind me giving another person a chance that has no intention of doing anything different? That is simply life telling you to bow down to life. And I'm just not willing to do it anymore. So Did I know that going through doing deeper and deeper shadow work, going in and letting certain things go and focusing and aligning with myself, did I know that that would eventually help me to regulate my nervous system? No, because I didn't even know what a regulated nervous system was until I stepped into it. And I had to research it to figure out what is happening to me. Why am I so calm? I became so calm that it started to frighten me because I'm like, why am I so calm? I thought, dang, do I just not care about anything? But the reality is, I care about many things. I just don't choose to bend to things. I don't choose to let things weigh me down or decide who I am. I choose authenticity. I choose to wake up each day in a state of gratitude, grateful that my eyes open. If you can't think of anything to be grateful for, if your eyes open, if your mouth is working, if you are breathing, if your heart is beating, you got a reason to be grateful. So I wake up in gratefulness. I spend time with the Spirit, with God, whatever way you want to call it. I bask in the moments around me, like the birds waking up and the sun coming up and all the little animals that come out to visit me in my yard. And I ground myself, and grounding for me, just in case you're not sure what grounding for me is returning to center, right? Putting my feet back solidly on the ground. So every day I'm going to ground. So every day there's going to be a moment that I'm going to sit with my feet flat on the ground, hopefully in some form of nature if possible. And I'm just going to remember me. I'm going to bring myself back into this exact present moment, into me, right? Because one thing that many people don't realize is that you can carry other people's emotions sometimes, especially you may be empathic and don't know it, right? You may be carrying another person's emotion and you may be feeling heavy and you can't figure it out. And so you take yourself into this spiral as to what's going on. I don't understand why I'm feeling this way. When you could just take a moment to yourself every day, it doesn't take long, you take 5 minutes, and just sit silently, grounding yourself and like bringing yourself into the present, connecting with the feeling of earth and nature, the original source of life, right? Earth and nature was here before human existence was, right? So that's what I mean by, if you want to know how to live, just look at nature. Nature teaches you a lot about living. And you won't know it until you slow down. And then you'll sit there for a couple of minutes and you come into the present and you think about who you are and where you are and why you are. And then the next thing you know, you don't feel heavy anymore. Because in the moment that you remembered who you were, you remember that that emotion is not mine. That feeling is not mine. And then you just let it go. And I do it literally. I release that because it doesn't belong to me. I release any emotions, any thoughts, any ideas, any identities that are not mine. I release them. And within 5 minutes, I'm restored back to me. And I remember who I am. And my day goes back to what I say my day is. But it's every day because life is always moving. And sometimes it's more than once in a day, depending upon the circumstances that happen. But I'm always going to bring myself to the present because I could live my life thinking about the past and living in the traumas of my hurt and the experiences that happened there. I could spend my life thinking about the future, all the things I'm going to achieve, all the things I'm going to do, where my life is going to go, when I decide to date again. Haven't dated in a long time, but when I decide to date again, what that's going to look like. But all of that is just possibility. Who I am right now is my reality. Who I am in each moment is my reality. And who I choose to be each moment is automatically choosing the future for me. But if I choose to keep my mind focused on the past, then I'm going to make all of my decisions based on stuff that happened to me in the past that may have nothing to do with the present circumstance. And then before you know it, you become the bully of yourself. And nobody needs that. So, I'm who I am today because I'm regulated and authentic. That came because I chose to look deeper. That came because I knew that there was more than what the world had said that there was for my life, for life in general. And so now I teach this to others. I do my events and things like that for others because there's just nothing like being in a place of peace within yourself. Because then anything going on in the world automatically can become peaceful to you. Because you know how to separate yourself from the things that are not truly you. And in that, there's not even fully words to describe how beautiful that feeling is. But if I can say anything, it's worth it. So I would never tell someone they need to heal. I would never tell someone to do anything that they don't want to do. But I would suggest to you to consider it because I'm the living proof of what that change looks like. I glow now. When I go outside, I glow. And people just stare at me because the aura of a regulated nervous system is something very bright. And it is something that automatically attracts the attention simply because people are trying to figure out what it is. Am I authentic because I want the attention? Absolutely not. Because my priority is simply me. To be the version of myself that I say that I am consistently. And that really has nothing to do with other people. You know, anybody else or other people. It's more so about who I say I am. So, who do you say you are?